Well, hi everybody. Happy Saturday to you. So today we're going live on YouTube. So we've moved over from Facebook. So welcome everybody. Today we're talking about self-directed learning and how you can build that into yourself, into your program, and into other people that you're working with. So these are some strategies that I use to make sure that we've got that self-directed learning, because without self-directed learning, there can be a whole range of things that go wrong, including people relying on you to do things for them, people blaming you. So we'll get to that later. So welcome. So self-directed learning. Oh, why am I not going forward? Okay, self-directed learning. So as I said, today's outcomes with self-directed learning, particularly as family daycare educators, you get to set your own direction. So you get to guide where you want your business to go, where you want your professional development to go, what it is you need to know in order to get families on board or educator assistants on board, or if you just want to improve your practice. So this is the one way of setting your own goals and directions. Self-directed learning also will help you continue to improve your business or continue to improve your practice, or it will continue to improve your reflective skills so that you're able to become more confident in what you do. You've got, you can explain things to others more readily. So if a family asks you something, you can say, well, I do this because. So you've got a lot more confidence, and it also will help you with if you are managing any staff. So I will talk to service providers at some stage today, but it will also help you manage staff. And if you are an educator and you do have an educator assistant, by implementing self-learning practices or self-directed learning practices, you're able to get more out of others, more out of people. So that's what we're doing. So what is self-directed learning? Self-directed learning is the ability to see where you want to go and what you need to know in order to get there. So we do it all the time. Like people say to me all the time, like, you're a dog with a bone if you want to get something. And I think we all have a little bit of that in ourselves. If you want to learn how to make muffins, then, you go and you find a recipe, you try out a few things, you read a little bit about it. You don't have to immerse yourself in making muffins, although I did. But if you want to know something, you will go and find it. And the joys of today is everything is at our fingertips. And I often say, what would I do without Google? It just answers all the questions. Some of them are not right, of course, but there's a really good starting point just with Google around self-directed learning and what that looks like for you and where you want to go. Now, most of us do it, as I said, out of when I wanted to learn muffins. Most of it do it interest-based. So it's our interest that drives that behaviour for us to learn more about something. So what if we were able to embed that interest, that drive into our practice every day and support others by implementing that drive and that practice in them every day? Now, as I said, it's like a dog with a bone. You've got to know what you want. Like if we use the muffins, for example, I knew that I wanted a nice muffin. I knew that I wanted to give people muffins. So what is it that I needed to know? And those of you who've been around me for a while know that I don't cook, and I only started cooking in the last few years. So for me, I had to learn a lot of things that I possibly didn't learn back then. So that was a self-directed learning. Now I'm really confident with muffins, and believe it or not, I don't even make them anymore. But when we recognize we want to learn something, we can be with a dog with a bone. Another example is my child, who is grown now, but when she was younger, she was diagnosed with pediatric migraines. I got on and I found everything that I could find about pediatric migraines, and I did, the broad Google search. What is it? Where does it come from? And then I started finding who popped up over things. I started finding leaders in the field and what their diagnosis was, what their management techniques were, what their skills were. So I learned everything that I could possibly learn around pediatric migraines when my child was young. And I've got a whole range of management strategies now for migraines that I learned back then. And that was me with being a dog with a bone. So we all learn what we need to learn. Okay, but what if you don't know what you don't know? I've been to so many training presentations over the years, and at the end of it, they all say, thank you very much for your attendance. If you've got any questions, please let me know. And then there's always that trainer that says something like, tell me if we didn't cover anything we should have, or tell me if there's something that we didn't do, or tell me if you need more information about. And I've often sat there and listened to that question and thought, well, I don't know. That's what you're here for. You're here for to put me on the right path, to set me on the right direction so that I know. I don't know what I don't know. And sometimes, often things keep going wrong in our world and we go, why is it going wrong? So we don't know what we don't know sometimes. So that's where we're trying to get this embedded into your practice. So that does start with your reflections. If you don't know what you don't know, we open it up really broadly. Now, I'll give you an example of that shortly, but we open up our question really broadly. It's a wondering, it's a question. I wonder why I'm not getting the enrollments that I want. I wonder why I'm not getting the engagement that I want. I wonder why I can't make more money. I wonder why the muffins keep burning. I wonder why that migraine strategy didn't work. So they're all your starting points. They're your wonderings. And then what happens after your wonderings is that's when you become reflective. So, okay, you've asked yourself the question, why can't I get more enrollments? I wonder what that is. So that's your reflection stage. I wonder what that is. I'm advertising on Facebook to get more enrollments. I'm trying to get an educator assistant. I've put feelers out. I wonder why nobody's coming to me. Why is nobody answering these advertisements? I wonder why I'm doing what I'm doing and it's not really working. So that's your reflective practice. And then you've got to be purposeful in what you're doing. So what is the purpose? What is the purpose of getting more enrollments? Your enrollment systems may not be working. What is the purpose? The purpose is to get enrollments of families that suit your style, that suit your program, that make sure that you remain a viable business. So that is your purpose. So what do you need to know about your purpose? What do you need to know that the families that you feel are best suited to you? What do they need to know? And that reflection about what you have been doing and that reflect that purpose of what you're wanting to do, then we can start bringing those together. And that's when you can be a little bit more deliberate. So you may learn upon your reflections that, yes, you are putting advertisements out on Facebook for families, but is it going to the right is it going to the right area? Is it clearly communicating your message, or is it clearly communicating your philosophy? And you can engage other people to help you with this. If you've got colleagues, you can say, can you just have a look at this and make sure that my advertisement is right, or that I'm marketing in the right place, or whatever that looks like. So you've got to be deliberate in your actions, and sometimes being deliberate in your actions, that does mean that you've got to make yourself do things. If we go back to the interest-based self-directed learning, that's easy. You want to know something, off you go and do it, it's fine. But sometimes professionally it's really difficult, or maybe it's not even difficult, maybe it just comes down to when something goes wrong, that's often when we bring out our self-learning skills. Whereas what we should be doing is we should be doing a little bit of self-directed learning all day, every day, as part of what we do. And most of that does come from our reflective practice. And don't forget, if you are learning something new, you might ask a really big question of Google, like, how do I do my marketing? And that will take you to so many different places that it can be overwhelming and it can be too much information. So don't forget to come back to that and start bringing that down. So you might get 1,000 websites that you want to look at that Google give you to market. Then you start searching a little bit deeper. What is marketing? How can I do marketing? What is business? How do these business principles suit me? So don't forget your follow-up to go back to make sure that you are learning what you need to learn and you are staying on a path to self-directed learning. Now, I am constantly on a self-directed learning path. I have learned since since doing JPS, I've learned so much about videos and presentations and online learning and marketing. And I've learned how to put all of my business that I used in let's call it in the live world, which it was easier. I've learned to put that online, and I've learned to transfer that in a very different way. Like today, I'm doing this presentation, and I know that there's probably nobody sitting there, or maybe a few sitting there watching live. But what often happens with this, because I've presented it in a way, it actually reaches a lot more people, because people watch these kind of learnings, these kinds of professional development in their pajamas and those sorts of things. So it really is about reaching your target market. It is about what you need to know to deliver the product that you're delivering, all those sorts of things. So planning. So when it comes down to planning, I am a note taker. That's what I am. Some people use spreadsheets. I often use whiteboard. Whiteboards, there's a whole range of ways that you can do your planning. One of my ways is that I use my notebook, and that's how I go through and I jot down my ideas. I jot down my suggestions. If I do a really broad Google search, often what I do, I'll jot down the top 3 web pages that come up at that time, and then I may go and do a little bit more research after that. So the planning and the note taking, when I'm speaking to people, I'm taking notes. Those of you that I speak to regularly, I recommend a daily diary, so you can jot things in your daily diary, and that is your note taking. And if you use those, your notebook or your daily diary or your whiteboard, and you go back and you reflect on those. Now, I'll give you a tip with a whiteboard. If I put something on my whiteboard that I really want to capture, but I want to add to it, I take a photo of my whiteboard, and then I have a series of photos of what's been on my whiteboard. Sometimes I might get back to them next week. Sometimes I might get back to them next month. Sometimes I might get back to them in a year, but I keep them in a way that I can go looking back. So planning is a really big part of what you do. Now, it is an ongoing cycle. So any kind of self-directed learning, it's an ongoing cycle. As I said, you've got the wanderings in your head. I wonder if I did this. I wonder why this is not working. I wonder if I knew more, what would that be? I wonder if I wanted to get parents more engaged. How would I do that? I wonder why I can't change my rates. I wonder if I move that to there. So I wonder, they're your questions. And your questions and your planning, then that is what helps you achieve your goals. Now, I did say that sometimes with my planning, I don't go back for a week, a month, 12 months, whatever that is. It could be 2 years even. But you've got to set yourself some goals. So, with the examples of the muffins, let's say. So the muffins, I knew that I couldn't make muffins. I knew that that was not a competency that I had. I put in my learning, I wonder why I can't do this. What do I need to know? Well, I need to find a good recipe. Worked out a couple of different recipes. I found the easiest recipe that I could find that took me, to the place where I wanted to be. And I set myself a goal. I want to be able to make muffins and share muffins with my neighbours, make muffins for my daughter. I want to be able to do that within 6 months. So I put no pressure on myself to learn muffins, but I did when I had a spare time. The muffins. So that's where that deliberateness comes from. I set myself that goal, and the deliberateness came in. Okay, I'm sitting here, I'll search up muffins. Or when I go to the local supermarket and they have the free cookbook magazines, I would grab one of those and I would look for muffins or some kind of baking or something like that. So it's that cycle that kept me on track, and it's that cycle with any kind of self-directed learning. So if it is marketing, let's say, you want to learn marketing, I wonder why my marketing's not working. What do I need to know? Well, I know I found a couple of websites that will give me some ideas and some suggestions, so I'll take some notes for them. And you know what? I'll just think about what I've learned and I'll revisit it at the end of next week, or I'll keep my ears out. So you're setting yourself some goals for that professional learning. Now, as I said, with note-taking or journaling, a lot of people use journaling to keep themselves focused, to not lose any learning that they've had. So although Self-directed learning may take some time. By putting in your learnings and your notes and more questions in either a journal or a notebook or on your whiteboard, even whatever that is, that helps you not lose any learning that you've had from the past. And we've all done that. We've all gone forward and gone, I wonder where that comes from. And it's not until you go back and have a look that you realize where some of your learning generated from, what did that, and that is your reflective practice again. So I can't stress enough. Now, Linda and I, who you may have met, Linda works with me, and Linda is my partner in crime in JPS. So we often say we're digging for gold. Her and I are both note takers. Linda is more of a planner than what I am. Linda likes a nice plan, and she does a lot of planning, but we both, in our own different styles of planning, we both call what's looking for gold. So by keeping your notes, by keeping your day journals, by keeping your whiteboards, you're able to go back and have a look at what we call digging for gold. So it's that going backwards over your notes and you go, oh yes, I remember that. Oh, that now makes sense. Because sometimes if you learn something way back then and then you keep on adding to that learning, if you go back, that makes the new learning so much more clearer. So it's about going back to your foundational learning and making sure that that is all making sense and things are just falling into place for you. So digging for gold is one of the greatest skills you can utilize when it comes to your own self-directed learning. I love digging for gold, and if I had my work folder handy, I would show you. I go back on that, and then once I go back at the second time, I put things in sheets. So I put things in categories, and then I go back and I fine tune it. And sometimes I throw out notes that I don't even know what I was thinking at the time. They make absolutely no sense to me now. So I can throw those out, and it streamlines and focuses my learning. So it's a really good strategy to use, is digging for gold. Now, when I go back to what do you need to know? As a family daycare educator, you must know these top 5 things. You must know the National Quality Framework. And I do have the video, the NQF Made Easy, and that is just to make the National Quality Framework really simple and really simplified. So if somebody said to you, what is the National Quality Framework? You can say, well, the National Quality Framework is the Education and Care Services National Law, the Education and Care Services National Regulations, the National Quality Standards, and the Approved Learning Framework. So there's only 4 things that you need to remember for that, but you need to know what each individual document, what their roles are, how you implement those, how you can use that documentation for guidance, for additional training, for additional learning. You can even use it for reflection. So there's so much in those documents that will help you. So just know what the National Quality Framework is. As a family daycare educator, you must have an understanding of early childhood development. You don't need to be a pediatrician. You don't need to be a psychologist. You don't need to, be a I can't even think of anything else right now, but you don't need to be, but you have to have an understanding of early childhood development, understand how the physical body develops, how emotions develop, stages of learning. So you have to have an understanding of human development, particularly early childhood development. An understanding of human development does help with parent relationships, though. So if you can extend your knowledge on understanding demographics, understanding cognitive abilities, understanding socioeconomic demographics, all those sorts of things. So there is a lot that you must know. Customer service. You are running a business from home. There is no doubt about that. You are a business operator. So even though the National Quality Framework will talk to us about how we engage families whilst we're caring for children, what we have to have available for families, what families need to provide to us, such as enrolment forms, authorisations, all those sorts of things, having those customer service relationships. Every manager, whether you're a manager in an education and care service, whether you're the owner of the education and care service, or whether you're running dress shop. You need to have that understanding of the principles, at least, of customer service and what that looks like. And we used to think the world used to think customers were always right, and that's not necessarily true. But customers do need a certain level of professionalism, and they do have an expectation if it is a fee for service, and you are a fee for service, unless you're babysitting, which you wouldn't be watching this video if you were babysitting. You need to understand finances and accounts and setting your rates. Often I speak with educators who don't know how to set their own rates. Therefore, they leave themselves no room to negotiate if they go to a new provider, or if you're just starting out, what that looks like. So as a family daycare educator working from home, these are the top 5 things that you need to know in order to run a successful business. So if you don't know the ins and outs of this at this point and how it affects you, then this would be your starting point. This is if you don't know what you don't know and you're not sure, and you're reflecting, but you don't know the missing gaps. These are the top 5 places to start with for your self-directed learning, and put these in place. Now, as I said, you are running a business. There are principles to running a business that is different to running a community services model. So such as a non-for-profit education and care service is different, because in almost all cases, non-for-profit education and care services, the customers are members of the association. So that's a very different relationship than you working from home, where you are a contractor, you are registered to a service provider. That service provider has responsibility to make sure that you are providing an education and care service to the children that are enrolled in the childcare provider's service. So that even though you're providing the education and care for the children, those children are enrolled with the approved provider, not with you. So you're working in a competitive market where it's often really difficult, if not almost impossible, to see who your competitors are. So by having some business knowledge and having those business principles underpinning your customer service, underpinning your educational program, underpinning the value that you're giving to families, underpinning how you're meeting the national quality standards, underpinning how you're meeting the regulations. So having that will improve not only your commitment to yourself and what you do every day, but it will also provide a better service to the approved provider. It'll give you a better opportunity to negotiate the rates that you charge with that approved provider. It will give you a better opportunity to attract more customers, more business. The last thing we want for you, for family daycare educators working from home, is to lose enrollments, because that's a loss of income for you. And if you look at vacancies from that business perspective, we need to put some plans in place to make sure that you've got a waiting list, or the service provider's got a waiting list. So this is where your business skills and business principles come in to it. You want to be the most wanted and the best quality family daycare educator that you can be. And again, that will give you that bargaining power with approved providers. That will give you that more families will come to you. It'll be easier to attract an educator assistant if that's what you're after. It will just position you better in the market. But then that's how you've got your self-directed learning is, if you want to be the most wanted and you want to be the best family daycare educator that you can be for your community, then how are you going to achieve that? What planning do you need to do? What self-directed learning do you need to do? And how will you get there, and in what time frame? So let's just say you've done all your learning on those 5 top points that I told you. You know everything there is to know about the National Quality Framework and how it affects your business. You've got your customer relationship principles under control. You know what you're doing there. You've got you've got your budgets, you've got your rates, you've got all of that under control, and you know where you're going. The best thing about self-directed learning is, once you do know what you need to know, then so many other things fall out of that, which contribute to the quality of the service that you're providing. So as a family daycare educator running their own business from home, these are additional topics that are not only are they great to learn as an early childhood professional. I love theories and what theorists do. And if you learn a new theory and you observe the world, you can determine whether or not you agree with that theory, and you can determine whether or not aspects of that theory can be implemented in your service and in your program. One of the examples of that is what made me a really informed educator was the stages of play. I remember families saying to me many times, oh, they don't seem to have any friends yet. They seem like they play alone. And if that child was in that stage of play, and, they're a general age group, so if they're under 3, they don't really form those play relationships. So they engage in parallel play. So they engage in solitary play first. So we see younger children, they're happy to play by themselves, and that's what they want. And then as they mature, they move closer, so they have parallel play, so they'll be sitting beside their peers. They'll be doing the same thing as their peers, but they're not interacting with each other. And then we move into that social play where they are starting to have that reciprocal relationship where they're playing backwards and forwards. So that knowledge supported me so that I could support families. Your child doesn't engage in social play yet because developmentally this is the stage of play where they are. And that helps families understand early childhood. That helps families not worry about their child. That helps families support where their child is at because they're informed, because you informed them. So there's always an opportunity to continue to improve your practice and improve your relationships with your families and improve your business skills by self-directed learning. And these are other ways. So developmental milestones, I've had parents say things like, oh, can you toilet train them now? Or da, da, da. And are they developmentally ready to be toilet trained? Do they have that? Are they showing any indications of wanting to go to the toilet? Are they showing any indications of getting that they've just had a bowel movement? So by understanding those milestones that we look for all the time, that does help build relationships, and it does help keep children safe, and it does give children a more learning environment rather than I did this with my children, so this is what I'm going to do, or somebody told me this and this is what I'm going to do. By having that knowledge, we really can support families. We can develop a program, routines, transitions based on early childhood development and based on what we know. So there's a whole range of things that we can do moving forward. Okay. Now, let's say you're supervising others and you want to encourage self-directed learning in everybody else. There's a number of strategies that you can do. So if you've got an educator assistant and you can say, oh, you know what, next week I think I might do a program on dinosaurs. Can you please just go and find out a few things about dinosaurs? So you're advocating for self-direction learning. Follow that up in a couple of days. How did you go with the dinosaurs? Did you find out anything that we need to know? Now, sometimes we get 2 or 3 different types of people who say, oh, I didn't do it yet. They may simply not have done it because they didn't have the time that week, but they've got the intentions of doing it. That's fine. You may get some people that avoid self-directed learning. So, I haven't got to it yet. I haven't done it. Did you do it yet? No, I haven't got to it yet. So does that fall outside their interest? Why is it? What is the wondering? Why is that person not following any guidance towards any self-directed learning and following up on anything? So what does that look like? There are some indications there. So if you've got an educator assistant that you've asked to follow up dinosaurs, let's say, and that person doesn't do it, then the next step would be, look, I found a couple of websites for you. Why don't you jump on and have a look? So you're sort of tunneling their self-directed learning. You're giving them suggestions. And if they still can't do it, then say, okay, look, I'll do the dinosaurs this week. What would you like to do next week? Is there anything that you would like to do? So then we're tapping into their interest and see where those interests lie. If you are an approved provider and you have a number of people that you're supervising, the commitment to self-directed learning is a very big indicator of the caliber of educator that you have. So if you've got you're going out to do spot visits with an educator and you're giving them feedback on their program, or you're giving them ways that they can improve or things that they need to improve on, then you can say, look, I'm going to come back next week. You need to improve on hygiene. So I'm going to come back next week. So in the meantime, can you just look up the way that infections spread? Can you look up that? Can you look up safe hygiene practices? Can you do this? So you give them again another few tasks, and then you go back, and self-directed learning, and I can't stress this enough also, is also going back to that follow-up. So you go back to that educator next week and you say, how did you go with the cross-infection information? Now, ideally, you want that educator to say, yep, great, this is what I found. Do you know how much I realise now after doing this? So I'm going to implement an extra cleaning schedule after meals, or whatever. So there's that self-direction. And that's where, as the supervisor, when you've got somebody who does come up with the result of what you're looking for, that's when we congratulate, we share, we promote, and we advocate for that. And it is that cycle. If you continue that cycle of self-directed learning, and sometimes, as I said, we do need to push others in a direction, but what is it that you need to know? How do I find it? Where do I find it? What's the next stage? And that cycle is embedding that learning as you go. And that's for each of you, not just one of you. Now, also, with approved providers, when you are recruiting, make sure that you implement some questions that help you identify behaviours in the applicants or people wanting to register with your service. Or if you're educators and you're wanting an educator assistant, have some questions that indicate to you self-directed learning. So, and that can be on a personal note. If you had raised the question with me during an interview around muffins, I would have said, oh, I learned really hard to do muffins. If you raise the question with me during an interview and say, how did you get to wanting to be a family daycare educator, then I would say, well, I did some research on family daycare and this seemed to suit my needs. So there's an indication that somebody's committed to self-directed learning. So try and find that out in the beginning during your recruitment stage. That's very important. Now, the outcomes of having people without any kind of self-direction, and this is with all of us. If I had no commitment to self-direction when I started doing this and supporting family daycare, the family daycare sector, I would have remained stagnant. So that self-directed learning is also around keeping myself informed. It's around speaking with people. It's around networking. So there's a lot of other components that contribute to self-directed learning. But if you've got an educator that finishes their learning today and doesn't learn anymore, it's only a matter of time before that educator becomes stagnant. So that's a negative result of not having any kind of self-direction. The other thing is they can rely on you. I speak to a lot of approved providers that the educators say things like, oh, can you give it to me? You didn't give it to me. I didn't see that. I didn't know that. So there's that self-preservation where they shift the responsibility over. So that's a common behaviour. It also results in, if you are supervising somebody else, it can result in micromanaging, because if you've got somebody who's not going off to do any kind of learning or any kind of information gathering or any kind of reflection, then you've got to be the one that drives them. You've got to be the one that fills those gaps in their thinking. You've got to be the one that makes sure that they are doing the job right. So we don't want to get into that micromanagement, because these are the indications of when you get frustrated with somebody. When you go home and you say to your partner or your friends, oh, I can't believe they did that. Why did they do that? I've asked them 5 times. So sometimes that can lead to frustration, and then that can lead to difficult working relationships, and we all know where that can lead. So if you are leading others, I jumped that. So if you are leading others, you are the one that needs to have the self-directed learning, and then you advocate that to everybody else. You promote that. So when you've got educators coming to you, or if you've got an educator assistant coming to you, or even a family member, if you are a family daycare educator, it's around sharing that knowledge to everybody else. So if somebody comes up with a great idea around dinosaurs, yep, this is wonderful, this is great, we can do this, and we're going to share that. We're doing dinosaurs because this is what we're doing because. So you're able to inform others of your practice as you go also. When you are working with others, though, it is a cycle of observing. So you are observing somebody's professional practice, you are observing somebody's commitment to self-learning, and you are observing their planning in moving forward in their development. If not, this is something that you can do. You can do your observations, you can put a plan in place for somebody else and resource that person to find out more. So the example could be you're working with an educator assistant. Through your observations, you know that they're not really contributing to ideas to the educational program. So what can you do? Okay, in 3 months' time, I'm going to get you to do 5 activities or whatever that is. And these are some of the resources that you can use to come up with 4 or 5 activities, or 4 or 5, you know, maybe we need a different regular outing this year. Maybe we need something else this year. So it's about observing that they're not engaged, or that they could be engaged more. And sometimes it is because they don't want to be engaged. Sometimes it's because they don't want to be there. Sometimes they could be intimidated and not have the confidence that they need to go off and learn. Sometimes they just may not have a starting point yet. So this is where you can support somebody else's self-directed learning. Again, make sure if you are supporting somebody else's directed learning and your own, in fact, that you are coming back to the follow-up. The follow-up is one of the most important things in learning. I do training all the time, group training, individual training. I've done accredited training all the time. And training gets lost if you just do a presentation and you don't follow on. So this is where that self-directed learning really does play a big role, because I'm not going to follow up with you tomorrow. You've got to follow up with you tomorrow. So any kind of learning, you interpret that to meet your needs, and you ask yourself a number of wonderings, and then you follow it up, whether that be through digging for gold, or whether that is whatever that is for you. And make sure you alert everybody to what your learnings are. So you might have a newsletter that you say to families. You may put out a newsletter once a month and say, this is what I've learned about child development milestones. We're looking at children developing their skills of taking one or more direction. We're looking at, we've got 3 children that are hitting this milestone. So we're going to, we're going to improve our obstacle course, because we know that developmentally that's where we are. We're going to implement a cleaning schedule, because 2-year-olds really like to clean. So we're going to implement a cleaning schedule. So really promote your learning and promote your knowledge. It gives parents reassurance that you know what you're doing. You do know what you're doing. It gives, you're educating families, you're advocating for early childhood learning. So by sharing your knowledge and sharing your learning, you're actually advocating for early childhood and yourself. So when it does come to new learnings or improved practice, again, make sure you acknowledge that in yourself, and make sure you acknowledge that in others. Share that information, whether that be through your newsletters, or you may have targeted conversations with families. If we're talking about, the toilet training, well, this is what I've learned about toilet training, and these are some of the signs that we look for. So it's about making sure you're sharing that knowledge as you go. Include other people's learning. So if you do have an educator assistant that's gone off to learn something about dinosaurs or something else, and they bring that knowledge back, don't forget to use that knowledge. Don't forget to acknowledge that person, and make sure that that goes in the program, because then that will build not only their commitment to self-directed learning, it will also build their confidence as they go, because they know that they've contributed to something. And make sure that this is ongoing, or don't just do it as a one-off. This is an ongoing cycle that should underpin your business, and that ongoing cycle will absolutely embed your practice of self-directed learning, embed the practice of continued improvement. I guarantee it. Thank you very much for joining me today. Now, don't forget we do lives, or I do lives every Saturday here. We may change the day, not sure, but we do lives once a week. So by subscribing to this channel, you will be able to stay up to date and take control of your own learning for your family daycare business. I'll see you soon. See ya. Bye.